What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another The Sports Scoop mock draft. Today, I'm bringing you, I believe, my first mock draft of the year. I've been looking at it a lot. I mean, if I make some picks that you don't like, please let me know that in the comments. I'll make sure to respond to them and let you know my reasoning for them if you want me to go a little bit deeper. But I think we should just get straight into it. We've got some interesting picks coming up. I think the 1, 2, 3 is I think 1, 2, 3 is it's pretty not obvious who they're going to go with, but it's more, they're drafting best player available because it's first three overall picks, and these are teams that could use pretty much every position on the board. So we'll start it out. The Jaguars, I mean, it says it right there. Top team needs are offensive tackle and edge. And I mean, look at the top of the board. That's two perfectly good edge rushers right there. And I am going to go with that number one overall pick. Going to be Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan to the Jaguars. I mean, what's not to like about Aiden Hutchinson? He had an incredible year for Michigan, and I think the Jaguars are getting one hell of a player out of Hutchinson. He's definitely climbed the rankings recently in the past couple of months, I guess. But then we'll go number two, and again, Kayvon Thibodeau. We're gonna go edges back to back. I think that's probably being seen in most mock drafts, so not a huge surprise. But I think both of those teams kind of have to go edges there. Their positional needs, as most other positions are for these teams, and I think that both players will not necessarily benefit from being at those programs instead of other programs, but both of these teams will benefit from having these players on their roster. They will, I mean, probably be the top pass rushers for their respective teams. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson probably close with Josh Allen, but Thibodeau will most likely take on the role of that number one pass rusher in Detroit. And let's head on to the number three overall pick, and that is the Houston Texans. For the Texans, it's actually a little bit more of a toss-up because even though it is best position available, in my opinion, there are two players that I could definitely see being taken right here, and it's between those top two guys. It's Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame or Derek Stingley out of LSU. And I think while corner's a bit more of a positional need for the Texans because I mean they don't really have a true corner. To be fair, they don't have much by way of the entire team really. I'm gonna go with Kyle Hamilton on this one, and here's why. Kyle Hamilton is a very very convertible player. He can do so many things. And with the amount of things that the Texans need in this draft class, why not draft a player that can be versatile for you, that can do multiple things? He can play safety, he can line up as that sub linebacker. He's got good hands, good tracking of the ball. So I'm gonna go Kyle Hamilton there. Moving on to the Jets pick right here. And for the first time this draft, I'm not gonna go with the top player on the board. It's not going to be Derek Stingley on this pick. I'm sure Surrey has an opinion on this pick, but I'm going to go out of Alabama. It's Evan Neal. Sorry, I know not that far from number one on the board, but we're going to go Evan Neal. The Jets need offensive line work. He'll be opposite Mekhi Becton, and that's two really good tackles for the next 10 years. And I think that'll definitely be a great place for them to draft in this offseason because they, I mean, so clearly need help on that offensive line. If they want to get guys like Zach Wilson and Michael Carter and Elijah Moore going, they're going to need to protect them first. So that's going to be my pick right there. Now let's move on to, here we go, my team. Now here I finally have like an opinion based on what I personally think that my team should do. So let's go ahead and take Ikem Ekwonu. Uh, I hope I'm saying that right. Giants, it's pretty obvious. Offensive line help is needed, and Ekwonu gets that done. I really like Ekwonu out of NC State. He's definitely another player like Hutchinson who has climbed the rankings as of recent. I think I had him on my first big board around 22, and he's now in the top 10 in my big board. I don't have him top five quite yet. I think there's a decent enough chance he will get taken top five, but I think in terms of talent, definitely a top 10 player. And I think Ekwonu would be a very good pick for the Giants at five. A little bit disappointed that Evan Neal doesn't drop, or obviously Thibodeau or Hutchinson, but Ekwonu will be a stud of a pick at five. and then we'll hand it over to the Panthers at 6. Now, top couple players on the board. I don't think that the Panthers need to address defensive help. Before injuries, the Panthers defense played really well at the beginning of the season with J.C. Horn, Stephon Gilmore, Brian Burns, just some of the top names there. So I think they will go offensive with this pick. They'll be a little bit mad at Ekwonu and Neal being off the board because they could also use some offensive line help. I would not draft quarterback this early this year. I just don't think the Panthers have a quarterback up on the board that they'd be willing to take. I don't think anybody really does unless they're truly that desperate for a quarterback. And the Panthers do have Sam Darnold, Cam Newton. They have options, not very good ones, but options. So because of that, you have to look down a little bit. You're going to disregard these top 4 guys because they're all on the defensive side of the ball. I do think Karlaftis and Jordan Davis wouldn't be bad picks for them, but I am going to go with Charles Cross. 3rd offensive tackle off the board in a row. Maybe a little bit boring, but I think all 3 teams that took them really need an offensive tackle. And that's going to set up now my Giants pick. I did not pick Charles Cross based on who I wanted for the Giants, by the way. However, I am going to take George Karlaftis out of Purdue. I think the Giants, so obviously drafted Azeez Ojulari last year in the 2nd round. And I think it was a good pick. Azeez Ojulari, we all saw the impacts he had immediately. I don't know off the top of my head how many sacks he had, but we did see some guys like Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence go a little bit quieter. And with the Giants paying Leonard Williams particularly a lot of money, Karlaftis is a really good replacement for Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams will not be leaving this year, most likely, unless he gets traded, which I haven't heard anything about a Leonard Williams trade. But this pick, I think they would do really well to draft Karlaftis because they just a lot of the times in Giants games they lose at the line of scrimmage, and if they're drafting an offensive tackle and an edge rusher with their top 2 picks, they're trying to change that, and I think that'll mean less sacks on Daniel Jones because I'm assuming he will be the starter next year. They have said so, but with new GM, new head coach, that could always change. And then they'll be getting more sacks, adding someone like George Karlaftis, who's had an unbelievable season out of Purdue, another one who's climbed the rankings. On my big board, he was only ranked 14th, and now I think, again, easily a top 10 talent. Moving on to the Falcons, though, I think they'll be mad with Karlaftis going off the board, but I think they'll be just as happy in getting either a Derek Stingley or a Jordan Davis. Now, if Derek Stingley were to fall this far, I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons snatched him up off the board in a heartbeat. So that's why I'm going to take Derek Stingley. I know they may need more help with Jordan Davis out of Georgia, but Derek Stingley, I mean, we've seen him as the top corner in this draft class for probably the last 2-3 years. He's been such a big name. Obviously did not play this season for LSU, but I think he still will have such a big name in this draft. And if he falls to 8, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Panthers took him at 6 just because he's so good, or the Giants took him at 7. I think that the Falcons would be hard pressed to pass up on him with how bad their defense is. Moving on to the Broncos pick. Now, this one is a little bit tougher because obviously corner's not a big need for them with slipping my brain just a little bit, but Patrick Surtain and other names in the secondary, Justin Simmons. But I think they also wouldn't really go with Jordan Davis. I think he'd be the more likely of the two. I'm actually going to go ahead and, probably against my own better judgment here, I'm going to take the first quarterback off the board. I'm going to take Kenny Pickett. I don't necessarily think that Kenny Pickett is the best quarterback in this draft class, especially for potential down the road. However, the Broncos need a day 1 starter because Drew Lock has not shown that he can play in that role, and Teddy Bridgewater's a transition quarterback, right? You pick him up off of free agency, or you make a late round pick trade for him, and he sort of tides you over until you are in the spot where you can draft a quarterback. And they're in a spot where they can draft a quarterback. The Broncos were nothing special this year, we know that, but they were they do have threats now with Jelante Williams, who played really well, Melvin Gordon, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant. That's a pretty dynamic offensive threats. But their quarterback situation, we know how that is. Defensively, I think they're okay. Nothing special. Nothing. They're not a bottom 2, bottom 5 defense in the league that I'm aware of. So I think Kenny Pickett's the pick here. I think Malik Willis may have higher potential going down the line, but I think he's also not as NFL ready. We've seen guys come out of smaller colleges like Zach Wilson who sort of just maybe need a year to get nurtured into that role. So I would see Malik Willis going to a team that more so has a quarterback for another year or two, like maybe the Bucs or the Falcons. But I think Malik Willis could be a top quarterback, but Kenny Pickett will definitely he could if he goes to the Broncos, he would most likely be day one starter there, considering the competition there. Now to the second Jets pick in the top 10. That's number 10 overall. I'm going to go. We went with Evan Neal earlier. I'm going to go with someone to help out Bryce Hall in that secondary. Again, Serge, please let me know if I'm doing you a disservice here, but I'm going to take Andrew Booth. I really like Andrew Booth. He's kind of a freak. He is, I mean, not as great of a tackler as you might expect, considering his size, but he is super aggressive, great in coverage, of course, controls his speed incredibly well. His acceleration, his change of speed. I mean, it's top notch. Super calm player. He knows what to do in pretty much every situation, and his timing is unbelievable. It's his speed, his timing, his. I mean, how calm he is. He's just a very fun player to watch. I mean, you don't throw his way. If you're a college quarterback and you're playing against Clemson, you're keeping the ball away from Andrew Booth as far away as possible because he will capitalize on any bad throw or bad judgment you make. And I think the Jets will be hoping that he can have that same impact when he makes it to the big leagues. And I think he definitely will opposite Bryce Hall. Now, moving on to the number 9 overall pick, that's the Washington football team. Taylor Heineke at the helm. Could we see them go quarterback here? Matt Corral's on the board. I think it's definitely a possibility. However, I'm going to go with Kenyon Green, inside offensive lineman. He's a guard out of Texas A&M, and that's because Washington right now, Gibson kind of struggled to get going this season. I know in the end, numbers wise, he was all right. He did okay. I think he was over 1,000 yards, but they didn't have a very successful year running the ball or protecting Heineke. So I think Kenyon Green, especially with Brandon Scherf, their right guard, currently being a free agent next year, I think Kenyon Green would be a very, very good pick for A&M. For Washington here out of A&M. I think Kenyon Green's a fantastic player. Also climbing the boards. I wouldn't be surprised if he breaches into the top 10 with a Jets pick or a Falcons or even a Giants pick. I would not be surprised. Moving on to number 12, it's time that the top guy on the board goes again. It's Jordan Davis out of Georgia to the Minnesota Vikings. I like Jordan Davis. Let's start with that. He's a very dynamic player. He's good counter moves, good power moves. He does it all. He's very good technically. Plays all over the D line, disengages to get to the quarterback, and I think he's the kind of player that the Vikings need at their D tackle spot. Vikings, something I noticed when watching the Vikings this season, they were not getting the quarterback often. Tell me if I'm wrong, Vikings fans, but pass rush is needed Everson Griffin, Danielle Hunter have sort of gone quiet because of injuries, Everson Griffin, of course, getting older, and I believe he left. I 100% could be wrong there. I just haven't heard his name there all season, but with injuries as well, defensive line help is definitely needed, and I think Jordan Davis would fill that role really, really well. He's, of course, uh, with a player who's not being drafted top 10, and I don't think should be drafted top 10, he leaves a little bit to be desired, and that for Jordan Davis is in the run game. Not the greatest of run stoppers, but he does have the skill to play in the pass game. He's really good at rushing the passer. I would not be surprised if the Vikings took someone like Jordan Davis with this pick. Now the Browns, and I think a lot of us expected the Browns to have a much better year and consequently a much lower draft pick. Instead, they're picking at number 13, and they've got options. I think wide receiver is definitely a massive need for them right now. But when we look at wide receiver, so guys like Garrett Wilson were a lot higher when the year started. He's dropped a little bit. I have Garrett Wilson number 8 on my big board. This is from, I believe, just 2 months ago. Garrett Wilson was at number 8, and now he's at number 20 on this. behind a guy who I think is definitely better than him, Alabama. So the three guys up top, Jameson Williams, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. I think the Browns have to go receiver here after losing Odell Beckham. Jarvis Landry hasn't been producing at the same level. They've got guys like Donovan Peoples-Jones, but Baker Mayfield hasn't been able to get the ball out to them. And maybe that's on Baker Mayfield. Maybe that's on the offensive line. I highly doubt that. And maybe that's on the receivers not getting open, not getting separation. Now, I'm hesitant to draft Jameson Williams here because of the injury. A terrible, I believe, torn ACL. And I think the risk reward on Jameson Williams is going to be worth it for the Cleveland Browns. Jameson Williams should be healthy for the start of the season. I don't know. I haven't checked any reports on it, but Jameson Williams was so dynamic after transferring out of Ohio State at the beginning of, I believe that was his junior year, and transferring to Alabama. I mean, he, alongside Bryce Young, he became the number one receiver over John Mechie for Bryce Young. His ability to run the deep ball is just incredible. His speed, he's so fast. I think Jameson Williams, the risk reward on that injury is going to be worth it for the Browns. So I'm going to take Jameson Williams for Cleveland to give Baker Mayfield an option. Now the Ravens, I think I'm going to go right here. Not much to say for the Ravens. I think after losing Matthew Judon, they're going to go with an edge rusher or an outside linebacker, someone to fill that role that he left. And I mean, he did leave a really big hole. You could almost feel Matt Judon just gone in that defense and the impact he had for New England as well. I'm going to draft David Ojabo out of Michigan. Another guy who's climbing the boards. I really like Ojabo. Playing on the opposite side, playing opposite of Aiden Hutchinson at Michigan, I think he really could have a big impact in this Ravens team. He's good at getting to the passer, and I think that's what the Ravens need after Judon left last season. Now, Eagles, back-to-back picks. Matt Corral's top of the board. It will not be Matt Corral. They've got Jalen Hurts. He's their guy as of right now. Unless he does something terrible next year, he's probably their guy for the next 5 years, at least. Now, Tyler Linderbaum, I also think is not the pick with guys like Brandon Brooks and Jason Kelce still playing. So that means we have to look down a little bit. DeMarvin Leal, probably not the right option with Fletcher Cox. Holding down the middle. We know how he does it. Trayvon Walker also could get the pick here, but I'm going to go just one further and look at Devin Lloyd out of Utah. I really like Devin Lloyd, and I believe Kian really likes Devin Lloyd, the linebacker to Utah. He's filling this hole in the Eagles' defense that they've got Darius Slay at corner. They've got Fletcher Cox rushing the passer. They've got guys. I'm completely blanking. They've got top tier pass rushers though, so I don't think DeMarvin Leal or Trayvon Walker will need the pick. So I'm gonna go Devin Lloyd, right? I think they need more work at linebacker, and then offense side of the ball. They don't need as much work. They have a solid enough offensive line. It's aging, but it's a good enough offensive line to hold them over. Jalen Hurts at quarterback. Miles Sanders. We know their running back room is incredible with Miles Sanders leading the way. Wide receiver, they've got Devontae Smith. They've got other guys that are capable of catching the ball. I'm still forgetting. Boston Scott. We know how he does it out of the backfield. Maybe only against the Giants, but still. Quez Watkins. Sorry, that's who I was thinking of. Devonta Smith and Quez Watkins locking down the receiving corps for right now. But 2 picks in a row, and here I am gonna go to that spot I was just talking about. Maybe contradict myself just a little bit. Hopefully not too confusing, but I am going to draft Garrett Wilson. I think just giving Jalen Hurts more support, because Hurts' passing numbers this season were not great. He was amazing running the ball. He was really the leader of that running back room from the quarterback spot. But I think he could use more threats, and Garrett Wilson poses a big threat in the slot. Garrett Wilson, he's purely a slot receiver. He can run those jet sweeps, those end arounds, everything. He's incredible in the open field. He can beat any defender one-on-one, but obviously he's pretty slot dependent right now. Out of Ohio State, he primarily played in the slot. He's not great. His timing on the outside, so they would play him in the slot. Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins would have to deal with being on the outside, which I think they're both players capable of doing. But let's move on to the Chargers. Now with this pick, I'm going to take, I think I'm trying to think what I did last year for the Chargers. I think it was edge rusher last year for the Chargers is what I was trying to do, but they did not end up going there. So I am going to go. They went Rashawn Slater last year. Tackle is still, for whatever reason, that top need. Even with Rashawn Slater being one of the top rookies of the year, I'm going to go with Trayvon Walker. I like Trayvon Walker, another guy who's climbing the board out of Georgia. I think he's playing next to guys like Jordan Davis. So that defensive line with Georgia, I mean, we saw they had the best defense in the league, led by guys like Jordan Davis and Trayvon Walker. I really like Trayvon Walker going to the Chargers because the Chargers need some more help rushing the passer. Obviously, we know they have Joey Bosa. We know what impact Joey Bosa can have, but I mean, right now, that's the only name that's really getting to the pass rush for the Chargers. Chargers fans, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only big name on that defensive line is Joey Bosa, and Trayvon Walker's a guy who can just help reinforce that defensive line. Moving to the Saints, interesting one. We do not know what's going on with that quarterback situation, so that is going to be the pick for me. And again, because they need a day one starter, I'm going to have to stay away from Malik Willis, and I am going to. Now, here's an interesting one. I think I'm going to take. No, you don't scratch that. I think they have to take the best quarterback on the board. I was going to say Sam Howell out of UNC, but I think Matt Corral has to be the pick here. He was widely regarded as the number one quarterback in the class up until a few weeks ago when I suppose Kenny Pickett passed him. But I think Corral could have an immediate impact on this offense that has been starting, uh, namely Taysom Hill, who's not really a quarterback. So they can definitely use this pick for the right player. That's Matt Corral. They could definitely go other places as well. Um, sorry. Offensive line looks good, but they could use some help in their secondary with guys like Roger McCreary or even draft receivers. Chris Olave, Treylon Burks are still there, and Jahan Dotson. But I think quarterback has to be the pick for them there because we don't even know if they're starting a quarterback at quarterback come next season. So Matt Corral's the pick. Now the Eagles, 3 picks in the last 5. And I mean, I'm sort of running out of picks for the Eagles. It's been they how many guys could they possibly take? It's like the Dolphins last year, but they're all within a short span. At least the Dolphins were spread out. So I'm gonna go to Roger McCreary, corner out of Auburn. I like Roger McCreary, and I think they need help in their secondary. But as we move later, we're gonna start to speed up. So this is a pick I actually want to talk about. The Steelers pick. Quarterback is definitely need with Big Ben retiring. However, offensive line is probably a bigger need, if you ask me. Najee Harris had some of his best runs this season were -1 or 0 or 1 yard gains, potentially. And that's due to a terrible offensive line. Now, I ooh, I still haven't fully decided where I'm going to go with this pick. However, there's one reason that's pushing me to taking a quarterback, and that's looking at the offensive linemen that are in free agency this year. No big names at quarterback. However, the offensive line, we have Teron Armstead and Orlando Brown at tackle. We've got Brandon Scherf and Laken Tomlinson at guard, and Ryan Jensen's a center who is in free. All 5 guys most likely entering free agency. And I mean, obviously, no one's signing all 5 of them. That would be crazy. You'd have the best offensive line in the league with those 5 guys. But even if you can sign 1, maybe 2 of them to bolster your offensive line and make it so you don't need to pick offensive line this year and address the quarterback need. So I am going to go ahead and take Sam Howell. And that's because I think he, right now, more fits the scheme that Pittsburgh wants to play, considering they've just had Big Ben for the last 15, 20 years, than Malik Willis. It's either Malik Willis or Sam Howell at that quarterback spot. And while I think Malik Willis will be the better player, he needs to sit for a year, in my opinion. And he's a scrambling quarterback, and that's not what they need right now. They need someone to fill Big Ben's shoes. He's taken them places over his career, and they need someone who can do that again. And I think Sam Howell more resembles that quarterback, just like what the Patriots did with Mac Jones last year. Mac Jones more resembles Tom Brady than any of the other scrambling quarterbacks did. Moving on to here they are, the New England Patriots. I think they did a lot better than what most people were expecting after drafting Mac Jones. People weren't so high on him. So Of course, it won't be a quarterback pick. Let me reset that for you really quick. And I think I'm going to bolster their wide receiver core. Uh, it's not strong. I'm struggling to remember guys there. I know I could name some for you, Jacoby Myers, namely, but we're gonna draft Chris Olave out of Ohio State, third receiver that has played at Ohio State in his college career off the board. Obviously, that first one, Jameson Williams, started at Ohio State and went to Alabama, but Chris Olave is, I think, a really talented receiver. I have him right here. He's a great route runner. He's someone that Mac Jones, I mean, great route runner, fits Mac Jones's personality, his style, sorry, not his personality. He can run those short routes. He can run prolific routes and get Mac Jones can get him the ball. He gains so much separation from corners that I think he'll be a player that Mac Jones will love throwing to, someone that Bill Belichick will love having in his system. That being said, I don't know that Bill Belichick would draft someone like Chris Olave. I feel like Belichick's draft picks are not necessarily smarter than drafting Chris Olave, but he doesn't go for those the flashy, the bold players. He takes the players that he knows will fit into his system and the players that he knows he can mold into something great. And I respect the hell out of that. He's the best coach ever. So whatever he can do with a player he thinks he can do it with, by all means, he should do that. Obviously, I'm not a Patriots fan, but you know. Now moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders. Max Crosby was unbelievable this year off the edge, but nobody else rushed the passer for the Raiders. They drafted Cleveland Farrell, I believe, number 4 overall. The year Kyler Murray was drafted, so 2 years ago, and he has had no impact on the team. So I am going to draft DeMarvin Leal out of Texas A&M. I think they just need another pass rusher to help out Max Crosby get to the quarterback, and DeMarvin Leal's the guy to do it for them. He's super powerful. He's great in the run game. One problem with DeMarvin Leal, he he's kind of a one-dimensional pass rusher. He's great in the run game, but when he gets to the pass game, he's a powerful guy, but that's just about it. He's not really dynamic. Once if an offensive lineman can make first contact with DeMarvin Leal, he's pretty much out of the play. So if he can work on that, if he can work on his counter, his finesse moves, instead of just solely getting those power moves down, which we know he can do, he can turn into one heck of a player at that defensive tackle spot. Moving to the Cardinals at pick 23. Sorry, I know I said it a couple picks ago, but I'm going to try to start speeding it up. We're going to go here with Ahmad Gardner. Kian loves Ahmad Gardner, so I'm going to do him right with taking Ahmad Gardner in the first round. Just kidding. I was always going to take Gardner in the first round, but he did really well this season for Cincinnati. Mixing up the teams Alabama played in the championship and in the playoffs. But great corner for Cincinnati this season. He's another guy who I think could definitely be taken a lot higher than 23. I definitely could have seen him going 19 to the Eagles, even earlier, potentially to the Chargers or Saints. Obviously, Saints need that quarterback. But Ahmad Gardner, I think, will fit the Cardinals really well opposite Byron Murphy. I think he'd be a great player for them, and they need that corner, and he's the guy to do it. Cowboys, after such a successful draft last year with Micah Parsons, that's all you really need. He's been unbelievable defensive rookie of the year for sure. No questions about it. He's even probably a contender for defensive player of the year if you look top 5, maybe top 10. But I think they're going to bolster their defense even more, and that's going to be, unfortunately, a little bit dropped, but it's Nakobe Dean. I think they could use a linebacker over anything else. They've got Trayvon Diggs at corner. They've got Micah Parsons as more of an edge rusher, outside linebacker. He can play in the middle, but I think Nakobe Dean will be a really good player for them to get on their roster out of Georgia. I think he's potentially the best linebacker in this class. He's there up there with Devin Lloyd. I would probably give Devin Lloyd the spot over him, but both fantastic players, and I would really like to see how Nakobe Dean pairs up with guys like Leighton Vander Esch and Micah Parsons coming up this season. Now to the Bills. I think there's only one way this pick could go, and that's going to be Tyler Linderbaum. I would be really surprised if Linderbaum dropped all the way down here, but I think it's a really talented class, so I could definitely see any one of these players that I have drafted so far drop down to the late first round. Linderbaum, the Bills would be super happy to get Linderbaum at pick number 25. And they could definitely use some help bolstering that offensive line so that they can get more of a run game going with Josh Allen, with Devin Singletary, with potentially Zach Moss next season. Now to the Titans. Derrick Henry coming back from injury. I think this is a surprise team that could go out and take Malik Willis. I don't think they will, though. I think they've got enough faith in Ryan Tannehill to not just draft a quarterback without sort of his consent, without them knowing he's leaving. And so I think they're going to go to help Ryan Tannehill out with a wide receiver. And my wide receiver pick for them is going to be, sorry, let me just check one thing really quick. Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson. We're going to draft Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. I know Treylon Burks is listed higher than him, but with the physical receivers that Tennessee already has in A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, I know Julio Jones didn't have a massive impact this season, but they're both very physical receivers. So Jahan Dotson's a guy they could use very, very well instead of Treylon Burks, who's mainly a slot guy, yet he's still 6'3". He's quick. Very favorable matchup guy, but he sort of fits that A.J. Brown kind of player, I feel like. So I don't think they'll want two of him. Correct me if I'm wrong, but A.J. Brown, I believe, is similar in height. I believe he's around 6'3". But let's move on to the Buccaneers pick. Another team who could draft Malik Willis. But again, I don't think they will. It's a tough one here because the Bucs have such a well-rounded team. They've got such a good team that it doesn't really... It almost doesn't make sense for them to draft here, but they're going to have to draft. And I think that it's going to be some help on their defensive line. Ndamukong Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul, William Golston, Shaq Barrett, all guys who have been very good for the Buccaneers this year. However, with Suh aging and JPP getting up there, Shaquille Barrett, I believe, is almost 30. So I'm going to draft let me see. At edge rusher, I believe, is where we're going with this one. If it'll ever load, there we go. And it's going to be Myjai Sanders. I know he's not the top guy there, but I think quite highly of Myjai Sanders. I think he's not super versatile, not super big. However, he's great length. He's super explosive off that edge, and he just never gets it. He works so hard for that Cincinnati defensive line alongside Ahmad Gardner at corner. We see some top Cincinnati defenders go off the board. He's great finesse, counter moves, and super quick edge rusher. So I think the Bucs could benefit from someone, bring a little bit of youth into that defense. Let's move on, though, to the Green Bay Packers. And with the Green Bay Packers, I'm going to go ahead and take Trevor Penning. I think Trevor Penning's the best offensive lineman on the board, and the Packers need help on that offensive line. So I think it's a win-win for the Packers if he drops to them. Out of Northern Iowa, not a guy who you hear his name much because he, again, another one who's climbed the board, plays at a smaller college, and I think he's a really fantastic player, though, and he would fit this Green Bay team really well opposite David Bakhtiari. Just help with their run game a little bit with Aaron Jones, and then help give Aaron Rodgers some protection. Yeah. Bengals will be mad. Bengals, oh boy. 9 sacks let up. This is after the divisional round. 9 sacks let up against the Titans. And people are starting to say, well, wow. Again, we're going to tell you should have not taken Jamar Chase. You should have taken Penei Sewell. But I'm going to go ahead and quickly dismiss that because that's ridiculous because Jamar Chase was one of the top receivers in the league this year. So you have two options last year. You're taking Jamar Chase, and Burrow's taking a lot of pressure, but at least he's got someone to throw to, someone really good to throw to. T. Higgins and Boyd and CJ Uzoma are good options, but they're not Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase has been unbelievable. Or you give Burrow the protection he needs from one of the 5 guys, and then he's throwing to 3 mediocre receiver tight ends. I think guys who could, especially T. Higgins, turn into a really good receiver. He needed that help in the receiving core. So, again, Jamar Chase was unbelievable, and look at where the Bengals are now in the conference championship, and I think at this point you can't really say they went wrong with that pick. So here they are going to go offensive line. Only a few guys I think they're going to want to take here, And that pick for me is going to be, just making sure I know exactly who I've left on the board. It's going to be Zion Johnson out of Boston College. Not someone who I've heard much of this season, but what I have heard is all good about Zion Johnson. He's going to help protect Mixon. He's going to help protect Burrow. Um, I really think he's again playing at an ACC school for football is not big. So you could see good games, bad games from Zion Johnson. We don't really know what to expect yet. But with the 29th overall pick, I think you're getting a really good player late in the first round. And let's move on to the Dolphins pick. Should I make Dylan Madden draft another receiver for the Dolphins? That's an interesting one. And I think it's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to draft Nicholas Petit Frere. Offensive line help for the Dolphins is desperately needed. You can ask Dylan. I have heard way too much of that. I don't want to hear more. And I'm going to draft, I'm just going to call him Nicholas for now because I don't really feel like saying the whole thing. Out of Ohio State, playing at the bigger school, he's had the experience. He's got the experience in his locker. He's a good player. He's a strong pass protector, good run protector, and I think he will do wonders for a non-existent Dolphins run game and a very short pass-dependent Dolphins pass game. I'm not going to go too hard on the Dolphins right here. I just think with their scheme of the short passes, he'll fit that scheme very well and give Tua extra protection to get those throws off. Now to the Lions, I'm going to go Treylon Burks. This was an easy one for me. They need dynamic players on offense. That's it. We've seen Amon-Ra St. Brown do all he can. I think they'll be hoping to get another steal like him. If you can get two good receivers there, catching for Jared Goff, maybe draft a quarterback next year. If they end up with the number one overall pick next year, that turns into Bryce Young. So I think Treylon Burks would be a great player for them to draft. So now you have St. Brown and Burks for the Detroit Lions, and I think dynamic players on offense, the Lions need to do something. And defense, is hard to get you 11 guys that are going to, really transform your defense. And it's easier to get you someone who's just going to be dynamic on the offense side of the ball. He's fast. He plays in the slot, even though he's 6'3". I think he'd be a great pick at pick 31 for the Lions. Now to the Kansas City Chiefs at pick 32. It's the last pick of the first round and the last pick I'm going to be doing today. It won't be one of those top guys at quarterback. I'm actually going to drop down just a couple picks and grab probably Cameron Thomas. I think the Chiefs could use a little bit of help rushing the passer. So I will get down there just so you guys can see the last little bit. They could use a little help rushing the passer. Chris Jones is a monster in the middle, and I think Melvin Ingram played really well off the edge, but they could really use some help. Melvin Ingram's not going to be playing for them for much longer. He's not going to be playing in the NFL for much longer, truth be told. And I think they just need to bolster that defensive line as much as possible. And I could definitely see them going round 1 defensive line, round 2 offensive line, round 3 defensive line, just making sure in the trenches they're winning every battle they can, because we know they win most speed battles, most quarterback battles. They've got Tyrann Mathieu, Nick Bolton they drafted last year. So I think into the trenches is where they should be going for this one. Just a quick scroll back through the picks, and I will make sure if you like this, go down below, subscribe if you haven't, give me a like, let me know down in the comments if you want to see us do a full team mock for your team. We'll go through a few picks for just your team, first few rounds, and let me know if one of your teams you don't like the pick, or even if it's not one of your teams, you just don't like the pick. Let me know what I should have done, and I will definitely take that into consideration for my next one. So I will see you guys later. I'm Charlie Nidell for The Sports Scoop. Thank you so much for watching.